In this lesson, I'm going to go over the LFOs. Now, there are 4 different LFOs that you can use to modulate various parameters of your sound. LFO 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now you see I can click on these dots and change the shape of the LFO. I have these dots which are not, these ones are a bit wider. These ones are, looks like transparent. Click on these dots, give it a bit of curve. You got that blue dot showing that I am adjusting that. Let's say I lower this, I can click, drag, and then it selects this dot. Now I can click anywhere else and create a new dot. So I double clicked and I can move this dot, move that. I can click, hold, drag, and now you have those 2 red. And now it's going to move these all the same amount, while keeping the distance between these 2 dots the same. I can, let's just add some more dots and do that again, kind of keeping those all the same. I can do this thing where I click and hold command on I can do this thing where I hold down command and click on a note and then drag it across to these other notes, and you can see they all change different colors. And then I can just click on one of these notes and then drag them, and then you can see they're all moving kind of like relative to each other. So that's something that's pretty interesting and cool to do to change your shape. And I have this little folder down here where I can choose some preset shapes, or I can add my own shapes, similar to how you would want if you wanted to save, like if I wanted to save this shape, I could do save shape. I can do this flat, just flatten it out. I could do what it was before. I had the square wave. No, it wasn't the square wave. It was the triangle wave. This is going up and down. This is a pretty common shape. Like if I want to add some modulation to the fine tuning. So I would assign this LFO 1, drag it up to the fine tuning, and have it going both ways. And you can see I have this grid. I can drag this grid up and down. It goes up to 16. And this grid is useful because it's useful for seeing where your dots are, but also if I hit shift and click, then it's going to make a straight line the size of the grid, and I can adjust this straight line up and down. So if I had a grid of 16, then it's going to make these little adjustments, or these little lines that are the size of the grid. And if I played that, yeah, it sounds not great. So let's put it back on the triangle. Then we have these mode options. So let's put this grid it was at 8. We have trigger, which means that it's going to start at the beginning each time I trigger a note. So it's always going to start down and go up and go back down. Envelope, it's going to trigger it at the beginning, go up and down, but it's not going to repeat. So when it's on trigger, it just constantly repeats. When it's on envelope, it's going to stop. Now, one thing to note is that if I have this shape, so you can see it's starting down and going up, it's going to start detuned, go up past the pitch that I am playing, and then go back down to being detuned. So if I'm playing, at the moment I'm playing a C, you can hear that final note is not a C. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that you probably want to maybe put this in the middle if you want to go back to the middle. Or sometimes I will do this thing where I have a shape that I created where it starts it in the beginning. So it's like a triangle shape that starts it in the beginning. So in the middle of the grid. So there, it's going back to the original note that I'm playing, that C note, starting in the middle, going up, going down, like that. So that's something that I had to do, create my own, because that was something that I was doing something, like with the pitch, I was trying to just doing this triangle wave and having it going bipolar, but it's kind of like starting below and then going up and then going below the pitch. So that's just like something to keep in mind. Now there is this envelope, and then we have off. So if I play a note over and over and over, it's just the start position is going to be, it's just constantly going in the background. So it's always going to be variable. And I like to use this for when I am adding like a little bit of a wobble to the fine tuning. Just having it start at random start points. Now, other than these modes, we've got the BPM. So you can see I've got the rate at 1/4, and you've got speeding it up all the way to fast. And then you see all the rates according to the BPM. So 1/4. We've got anchor, which means that if I change this knob, you can see that I turned off this anchor and it's smoothly transitioning between the rates. But what will happen if I have this anchor turned off and I'm transitioning between these rates, then it's going to get out of time. Like, it's not going to be in time with the song. So what this anchor does is that if I change the rate, it's going to retime this LFO and make sure that's in the BPM of the song. But you get this kind of like jump. It'll have this like jump effect where it jumps to get the LFO back into sync with the song. So that might not be desirable if you're doing like some kind of automation, or you want it to slowly get out of timing with the song by maybe automating this rate. Then you have the triplet options. Now this is where you can get your little T, means it's a triplet. It'll show the triplets. You can turn this off if you don't want the triplets. And then you have the dotted option where you can add a dot, and you can do dotted and the triplet. A lot of times I don't really use that. Let's assign this LFO to, let's just add it to a filter. I'll put it on this MGLO24 filter, LFO1, setting it to the cutoff, hitting Shift and an Option. So I've got the rate at 1/4, the BPM, the anchor on. Let's just go ahead and put this on trigger. Now this rise slowly increases the effect of the LFO. So if I put this at 1 bar, you'll hear this LFO slowly increase the effect of the LFO on this cutoff. And you can also visually see it. So that is what it does. It slowly increases the effect of the LFO. You have this delay, which means that the LFO doesn't even start until a bar, let's say. So let's play the note. Let's go ahead and adjust this cutoff. So you can see I had the note playing, but this cutoff was not adjusting according to the LFO. And you see also the line was just sitting there because it's going to wait a full bar for that LFO to start. And then you have this smooth option. So if I were making some kind of like lines that were not very smooth, like you can see these are a bit rigid lines. It's going to actually smooth out these points. So it's going to give a bit of a smoothness and curviness to these points so that the LFO is a bit smoother sounding. I'll set that back to the triangle wave, remove all the destinations. Now, if I take off this BPM, then the rate has just the hertz, and this anchor, it's not going to do anything. It only works for when this BPM is on. So let's just like reassign this LFO1 to the rate again. Now, what you could do is, this is where you can use other parameters to, like the envelopes, to affect the LFO. So I could take this LFO2 and maybe I'll give it a slow attack like this. I could assign this envelope 2 to the rate of my LFO1. And the LFO1 is assigned to the cutoff. So now the rate of this LFO1 is going to slowly increase according to this envelope 2. Let's adjust this. We can adjust this even more. And sometimes you might hear this effect in maybe like some house songs or like melodic techno, deep house, this effect. But you might hear it going the opposite. Maybe you hear it going fast to slow. So I could adjust this rate. Maybe slow down that attack even more. And you could obviously automate this rate knob, but this is just like a cool way to use your envelope, is to create that effect, assigning it to one of the parameters of the LFO. I could also, let's say, I don't know, adjust this like that, and then now it's gonna go down and up. Like that. So that's a cool thing. You can play around with this envelope assigned to, any of these parameters. I like to do it with the rate on the LFO. And let's go ahead and just reset this. So let's say this is my LFO. I've got the cutoff like this. I could take this envelope and assign the envelope just to the cutoff as well. So then what this envelope 2 is doing is it's slowly raising up this knob, whereas you've got this LFO1 just like constantly adjusting this LFO. So you've got adjusting the cutoff. So that's like another thing where you can do is just assigning multiple modulations to one parameter or even multiple parameters. Like I could even assign this to the level. Let's take this one off. Take off this filter. And let's just remove all those modulations. There's also something interesting about the LFO now. I'm going to add some of these nodes. I'm just double clicking on the line. And if I want to remove them, I double click to remove them. But let's say I have a interesting shape with my LFO. This is more of just like a fun feature of Serum, is I could hold down Option, click on my LFO1 and drag it up to one of my oscillators, and see you've got the green little plus thingy, the white plus with the green circle around it. So I can let go, and now it just creates the wavetable in the shape of the LFO. So that's kind of like a random, unique feature, hidden feature of Serum. And let's go and reset that again. Let me just initialize this preset. When I click on this LFO section, you can see that there is this drop down. You have that shift key function. When I was holding down shift, it was doing a flat line. So if I do ramp down, then you can see it's doing like a ramp down. If I do ramp up, if I hold down shift, it should just ramp it up. If I click, yeah, there we go. So it's got like a ramp up. So that's kind of cool. Let's see. Let me do ramp down, and then maybe I'll make these ones. Actually, let's do these all ramp down. Let's make these ones a bit smaller. Actually, I want that one to be louder. Now, when I right click, you can see that I have the options to set start point here and set loopback point here. Now, this only works in the envelope mode, but what happens is if I say, let's say, set the loopback point here, it's going to play through this LFO shape and then loop it again, but starting at this point. So let's say I have this LFO assigned to the level, and I'll play a note. You can hear that and see what is happening. You can see it plays through and then it loops back there. I could also choose a point for my start point. So let's say I didn't want to start at the beginning. I could choose a different start point. Let's remove this loop back point and click that, and let's do set start point there. So I could have it start at a different point. And that start point works for envelope and trigger, but not off, because off is random. So this is useful for trigger because it's still going to loop the whole thing, but envelope, it just starts there and then ends. Now you also see these options if I right click on one of the points to modulate X or modulate Y. And then you see it has the LFO bus, and then it has these different parameters that can modulate the X or the Y. The X being horizontal, if I want to move this left and right, or Y being up and down. Let me get a simpler shape in here again. Let's go to the triangle wave. And let's say I have this shape, but I want to have something that modulates this up and down. So I could have this LFO2. So let's say I go to modulate Y, LFO bus, LFO2, and this LFO2 is set at 1/4, and let's just hold down a note, see what happens. So now we see that LFO1, this point bouncing up and down because I have this LFO2 on this rate 1/4. So you can do this with LFOs. You have all of those bus options, and then you can adjust this amount up and down by going into your matrix. So you can see I've got this LFO2 assigned to this LFO bus 1. And if I adjust this amount up and down, then you can see that the amount adjusts up and down of how far up and down it can go. And if I click on these arrows, and I'm going to get more into the matrix and in a later video, but if I click on these arrows, then I can have it just go unidirectional or bidirectional, like that. So now let's remove this modulation, and we took off that LFO2. A lot of times what I will do, and you can also take the envelope. So let's say I have this envelope, let's slow down this attack. You could click drag envelope 2, and then you'll see the X and Y pop up. So you don't have to go to that drop-down menu. You could just go like this, and I just assigned it to the X. And now let's play it. Because I've got this attack going slowly up, it's going to slowly move this to the right according to my envelope. And let's remove that modulation. You could also do this with the macro knobs. We'll get more into the macro knobs later in a shorter video, but I could also just click, drag one of these macro knobs, and then I could easily automate this, which is what I mostly use this for, is just automating the LFO in my songs or when I'm making sounds. And let's remove that modulation. We've also got flip vertical and flip horizontal. Let's go ahead and flip vertical, flip horizontal. Let's go ahead and adjust the shape so we can see what it does. Flip horizontal, and there you've got it flipping horizontal. That is all that I wanted to show you about the LFOs. I'll see you in the next lesson.